Rain hammered the windshield like God himself had something to say, and I wasn't in the mood to listen. October in Pennsylvania doesn't mess around. The kind of cold that seeps through your jacket and settles in your bones. The kind of dark that makes 9 p.m. feel like the dead of night. I'd just finished loading 47 pallets of industrial equipment at the Scranton Distribution Center, my shoulders screaming from hours of wrestling 50-pound boxes, and all I wanted was to get home, kiss my boy goodnight, and collapse into bed next to Karen. 42 years on this earth, and I'd built something. Not much by some standards. A warehouse job, a modest house with a 30-year mortgage, a 15-year-old son named Jake who still let me embarrass him at his basketball games. But it was mine. Ours. The phone mount rattled loose again. Cheap piece of garbage I'd been meaning to replace for 6 months. And the screen lit up with a 570 area code. Local, but not in my contacts. I figured it was Jake. The kid had a habit of borrowing friends' phones when his died, usually to tell me he'd forgotten his homework at school or needed $20 for something super important. Hello? My voice came out rough, scraped raw from breathing warehouse dust all shift. Static. Then a woman's voice, low and ragged, like she'd been crying or running or both. Mike, it's me. I can't keep this buried. Meet at the old mill lot. Now. We end it clean. Click. I stared at the phone for a solid 10 seconds, waiting for something else. A callback. A text. Anything that would make sense of what I just heard. Nothing. My first thought, and I'm not proud of this, was that Karen was in trouble. Real trouble. The kind that makes your wife call from a strange number at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, voice shaking like that. My second thought was darker, the kind that slides in uninvited and refuses to leave. She knew my name, not Honey or Babe or any of the 100 little nicknames Karen had for me. Just Mike, cold, formal, like she was talking to a stranger who happened to share my name. The old mill lot. I knew exactly where that was. The abandoned steel plant on the edge of town, fenced off with chain link that rattled in the wind like bones. Karen and I used to park there when we were dating, back when we were stupid teenagers who thought we'd invented love. We'd sit on the hood of my dad's Buick and talk about the future, about the kids we'd have and the life we'd build. That was 23 years ago. I should have called her back. Should have dialed the number that lit up my screen and demanded to know what the hell was going on. But something stopped me. Maybe instinct, maybe cowardice. I hit redial anyway. Voicemail. Generic. No name. The exit for the mill came up fast, and I took it without thinking, my hands moving before my brain caught up. The gravel lot crunched under my tires as I pulled in, headlights cutting through the rain to illuminate the rusted skeleton of what used to be this town's heartbeat. A figure stepped out from the shadow of the old security booth. Not Karen. A man. Mid-40s, maybe. Suit that looked like it cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, now plastered to his body by the rain. His face was slick with water, or sweat, hard to tell. And his eyes had that particular shine of someone who's in way over their head. I kept my door half open, one foot on the ground, ready to move if I needed to. Mike Harlan? Who's asking? He wiped rain from his face with the back of his hand, a gesture that somehow made him look younger and more desperate. Ross, from the firm, Karen's firm. She sent me. Ross. The name landed somewhere in the back of my mind, stirring up fragments of conversation. Karen mentioned him sometimes, the boss's assistant, the one with the pressed shirts and the smile that made the secretaries blush. I'd seen him once at a company picnic, shaking hands and working the room like a politician. Hadn't thought much of him then. Thought a lot less of him now. What's going on? I asked. Where's Karen? Ross glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. She's in trouble, Mike. Deep trouble. The firm's running an audit tomorrow morning, and she's been covering for me. Falsifying timesheets, routing calls off the books, my screw-ups, her fingerprints. If the audit goes through, she's done. Career over. Maybe worse. I felt the world tilt slightly, like I'd stepped onto a boat and hadn't found my sea legs yet. Covering for you? What kind of covering? Look, can we talk somewhere dry? There's a diner about 10 minutes from here. Karen's meeting us there. She's breaking, man. She said you'd understand. Old favors, she said. Something about money you lent her mom for medical bills back when you two were starting out. The medical bills. $7,000 I'd scraped together from overtime and a small inheritance from my uncle, back when Karen's mother was dying of cancer and insurance had decided they'd paid enough. Karen had promised to pay it back, but I'd told her to forget it. We were family. That's what family did. I followed Ross's taillights through the rain, questions multiplying in my head like roaches. Why was she covering for him? What kind of screw-ups needed that much covering? And why hadn't she told me any of this? The diner was one of those places that never closes. Neon open sign buzzing in the window. Coffee that had probably been brewing since the Clinton administration. I grabbed a booth near the back and waited. Karen walked in 12 minutes later, and the woman I saw wasn't my wife. My wife had steady hands and a spine like steel. My wife handled depositions and difficult clients and our son's teenage mood swings with the same unflappable calm. My wife didn't have swollen eyes or a coat gripped to her chest like a drowning person holding a life preserver. She slid into the booth across from me, and for a long moment, neither of us said anything. Mike. Her voice cracked on my name. It's all crashing down. Start from the beginning. She looked at the table, at her hands, anywhere but my eyes. The affair started 6 months ago. Ross and me. I didn't plan it. I know that sounds like garbage, but it's true. It just happened. The late hours, the calls, all of it. I was hiding it from you. I thought I was smart enough to keep everything separate. But the audit's coming, and everything I did to cover our tracks is going to come out, and my job is gone. Everything is gone. The words hit me like a series of punches, each one landing before I could recover from the last. Affair. 6 months. Ross. Say that again, I heard myself say. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mike. I never meant 6 months. I wasn't asking anymore, just processing. 6 months of lies. 6 months of working late and client dinners and team-building workshops. 6 months of me warming up dinner for her in the microwave and believing every word that came out of her mouth. The money, Karen continued, words tumbling out like she couldn't stop them now that she'd started. I used some of our savings to cover gifts, things for Ross. I thought I could replace it before you noticed, but then one thing led to another and… Stop! I held up my hand. Just stop. My phone buzzed. Jake's face lit up the screen, a goofy selfie he'd taken as his contact photo. Dad? Home? Game's on. I stared at that photo for a long time. My boy. My whole reason for getting up in the morning and hauling myself to that warehouse and breaking my back for a paycheck that barely covered the bills. Jake didn't know his mother was sitting across from me right now, confessing to burning our family to the ground. I pulled out a $5 bill and dropped it on the table. That's for the coffee I'm not going to drink, I said, sliding out of the booth. You want to unload your cargo, Karen, you find someone else to haul it. Jake's my priority now. Mike, please, we need to talk about this. We needed to talk about it 6 months ago. Now I need to go home to our son. Ross was standing by the door, probably waiting to drive her somewhere. I stopped in front of him, close enough to smell his expensive cologne. The same cologne, I realized with a sick lurch, that I'd found a receipt for in Karen's coat pocket last month. She'd said it was a gift for her boss's birthday. Your audit fixed our marriage, I said, keeping my voice low. Hope it was worth it. He opened his mouth to respond, but I was already walking away, rain soaking through my jacket as I crossed the parking lot. Behind me, I heard him calling out, but the words drowned in the downpour. Sleep didn't happen that night. I sat in the kitchen until 3 a.m., staring at the wall and trying to make the pieces fit together in a way that didn't destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. Karen didn't come home. I didn't expect her to. Around 1 a.m., after Jake had gone to bed and the house had settled into that particular silence of the small hours, I did something I'd never done before in 17 years of marriage. I went through her things. The work tote was sitting in the mudroom where she'd left it that morning. Before the rain, before the phone call, before everything changed. Pennsylvania law was pretty clear on this. Marital property meant I had every right to look at anything in our shared home. But it still felt wrong, like I was crossing a line that should never have existed in the first place. Her planner was color-coded, organized with the same meticulous attention to detail she brought to everything. I flipped through the pages, heart sinking with every entry. Our verification, circled in red, recurring every 2 weeks for the past 6 months. Evening audit, with location codes that, when I plugged them into my phone, turned out to be motel chains within a 15-minute drive of her office. Dispatch workshop, dated 3 months back, the same weekend I'd picked up extra shifts at the warehouse to cover her professional development expenses. I photographed everything. Hands shaking, jaw clenched tight enough to crack a molar, I documented 6 months of lies in digital form. At 6 a.m., Jake shuffled into the kitchen, still half asleep in his basketball shorts and worn-out t-shirt. "Mom's call was weird last night," he said, pouring himself a bowl of cereal. "I heard her crying. Said something about Ross fixing something? Then she told me not to tell you because it was a surprise bonus." I set my coffee down very carefully. "When was this?" "I don't know, like 8? Before you got home." He shrugged, already scrolling through his phone. "She sounded stressed. Work stuff, probably." "Work stuff." "Sure." "Jake?" I waited until he looked up. "If you ever hear anything else like that, anything about Ross or bonuses or surprises, I need you to tell me, okay?" He gave me that look teenagers perfect, the one that says adults are weird and incomprehensible. "Okay, is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," I lied. "Just work stuff." The next 2 days were a masterclass in surveillance. Not the movie kind. No fancy equipment or dramatic car chases. Just a father trying to confirm what he already knew, one painful piece of evidence at a time. Day 2, I took my lunch break early and drove to the coffee shop across from Karen's firm. Told myself I was just grabbing a sandwich. Sat by the window for 45 minutes, watching her car in the parking lot. At 12:15, she walked out with Ross. Not unusual, co-workers grab lunch together all the time. But then she got in his car instead of hers, and they drove to a restaurant 20 minutes away, where I watched them through the window, heads bent close together, her hand on his arm. I photographed from the sidewalk. Public property. Perfectly legal. Day 3, I followed her errand after dinner. She'd told Jake she needed to pick up dry cleaning, except the dry cleaner was in the opposite direction from where her Civic was headed. Ross's apartment was in one of those new complexes on the north side of town, the kind with a gym and a pool and monthly rents that made my mortgage look reasonable. I parked 3 blocks away and watched her car sit in his lot for 45 minutes. When she finally came out, he walked her to her car. She bumped her shoulder against his in that casual, intimate way that people who've been sleeping together for a while develop without realizing it. Verification verified, I muttered to myself, throat tight with something between rage and grief. I found Tara Mills through a guy on my shift named Eddie, who'd gone through his own divorce 2 years back. Ex-cop turned private investigator, specializing in family law cases. $100 an hour, which was more than I made loading trucks, but Eddie swore she was worth every penny. She met me at a diner. Different one from before, I couldn't stomach going back to that place. and listened without interrupting as I laid out everything I knew. 6 months of documented patterns, she said when I finished, flipping through the photos I'd printed. That's actually helpful. Most people come to me with nothing but suspicion and I have to start from scratch. What do you need from me? Keep documenting. Public observations only. Nothing that could be construed as stalking or harassment. I'll pull what I can from public records, verify the timeline, look for any financial irregularities. She tapped one of the photos, a receipt I'd found in Karen's coat pocket, some restaurant I'd never heard of. If she's been using marital funds for this affair, that's dissipation. Could matter a lot in court. I haven't filed yet. Mills looked at me over her reading glasses. Why not? Because I need to know everything first. I'm not walking into this half-cocked. She nodded slowly, like I'd given the right answer to a test. Smart. Most people want to blow everything up the second they find out. You're thinking about the long game. I'm thinking about my son. The therapist's office smelled like lavender and disappointment. I'd never been to therapy before. My family wasn't the type to talk about feelings, and I'd always figured I could handle my own problems. But Eddie had insisted, said it was important for the custody case. The court wants to see that you're dealing with this in a healthy way, he'd said. Shows stability. Shows you're thinking about Jake, not just revenge. So there I was, sitting on a leather couch that cost more than my living room furniture, telling a woman with kind eyes and a notepad about the worst week of my life. Can you tell me what you're feeling right now, Mike? Angry. The word came out harder than I meant it to. Stupid. Like I've been driving blind for 6 months and everyone else could see the cliff coming except me. That's understandable. Betrayal trauma. I don't need a name for it. I need to figure out what to do next. She didn't flinch. Probably heard worse from other clients. What do you want to do next? I want to put my fist through a wall. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I want to drive to that apartment complex and drag him out by his expensive tie. I want to ask my wife why she chose a guy who uses more hair product than she does over 17 years of marriage. But you haven't done any of those things. No. Why not? I thought about Jake, asleep in his bed with his gaming headset still on. About the photo on my phone, the goofy selfie, about 18 years of birthdays and baseball games and homework help. Because my son needs a father, I said finally. Not a convict. The therapist wrote something in her notepad. That's good, Mike. That's really good. After the session, I went to the gym attached to the warehouse. They had a punching bag in the corner, old and cracked from years of guys like me working out their frustrations. I hit it until my knuckles bled, then wrapped them up and hit it some more. Eddie found me there around 7 p.m. still going at it like the bag owed me money. Harlan, Jesus, man, your hands. I stepped back, breathing hard. The wraps were soaked through with sweat and something darker. I'm fine. You're not fine. Nobody who's fine beats a bag until their knuckles look like raw hamburger. He grabbed a towel and tossed it at me. Sit down. Talk. I didn't want to talk. I wanted to hit something until the images stopped. Karen laughing at something Ross said, her hand on his arm. The casual way she bumped her shoulder against his in that parking lot. But Eddie had been through this. He knew the terrain. She's been lying to me for 6 months, I said, dropping onto the bench. 6 months of working late and client dinners while I'm here, loading boxes, thinking I'm building something for us, for our family. She's still lying? Probably. She claims it's over with Ross, but I don't believe a word that comes out of her mouth anymore. Eddie nodded, like this was exactly what he expected to hear. You file yet? Tomorrow. Attorney's got the papers ready. Good. Don't wait. The longer you wait, the more time she has to hide assets. Coach your kid, get her story straight. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You talked to Jake? About the divorce? Not yet. About his mother's affair? Hell no. He's going to find out eventually. Better it comes from you than from her. Or worse, from some kid at school whose parents heard the gossip. I stared at my wrapped hands. The blood was seeping through in spots, dark red against the white cotton. He's 15. He shouldn't have to deal with this. No, he shouldn't. But he's going to have to anyway. The question is whether he deals with it knowing his dad was straight with him, or knowing his dad lied to protect… What? His image of his mother? I didn't have an answer for that. Eddie was right. He usually was, about the hard stuff. But the thought of sitting Jake down and explaining that his mother had been sleeping with another man, using him as cover, building a secret life while we ate dinner together like a normal family. Give it a few days, Eddie said, reading my expression. But don't wait too long. Kids know more than we give them credit for. He probably already senses something's wrong. Week 2 started with a confrontation I couldn't avoid. Jake had been acting weird all weekend, quieter than usual, spending more time in his room. I figured it was normal teenage stuff until I found the sticker in his backpack. It was one of those motivational things, the kind you'd find in a corporate gift basket. Teamwork makes the dream work, in shiny letters over a stock photo of a handshake. But it wasn't the sticker that made my blood pressure spike. It was the note attached to it, in Karen's handwriting. Give this to your dad when the time is right. Don't tell him. It's a special surprise for my work bonus. Love you, sweetie. I found Jake in the backyard, shooting hoops at the rusted basket we'd put up when he was 8. Hey, I held up the sticker. What's this about? He caught the ball and turned around, looking guilty in the way only teenagers can. Mom gave it to me like a month ago. Said it was for some surprise thing at your work? I forgot about it. What surprise thing? I don't know, Dad. She just said to keep it quiet. Why? Is it bad? I looked at my son, really looked at him, 15 years old, caught between childhood and whatever came next, trying to navigate his parents' mess without a map or compass. None of this was his fault. It's fine, I said. Just curious. But later that night, I drove to the park where Karen had agreed to meet me. Neutral territory, public space. Plenty of witnesses if things went sideways. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench overlooking the empty playground. The same bench where we'd had our first real conversation 24 years ago, when I was a nervous kid with a bad haircut, and she was the prettiest girl I'd ever seen. You're using Jake, I said, not bothering with pleasantries. Giving him stickers and notes, making him part of your cover story. Mike, that's not… He thinks he's keeping a secret for his mom. He thinks he's part of some fun surprise. And the whole time he's just… What? Your fact checker? Your alibi? Karen's face went through several expressions, landing on defensive. He's imagining things. Kids do that. You're reading way too much into… Don't. I held up my phone, showing her a photo of the sticker and note. You wrote this. You gave it to him. Stop lying to me. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then slumped back against the bench. What do you want me to say? I want you to say you'll leave Jake out of this. Whatever happens between us, he doesn't deserve to be caught in the middle. I'm his mother, Mike. Then act like it. I walked away before she could respond. Behind me, I heard her start to cry, but I didn't turn around. The next morning, I filed for temporary support through my attorney, a guy named Hendricks, who'd been recommended by Mills. He walked me through the paperwork in his cramped office downtown, explaining each form in a way that made me feel like I was signing my own death warrant. Pennsylvania's a no-fault state, he said. Means the court doesn't really care who did what to whom. What matters is the equitable distribution of assets, and most importantly, the best interest of your son. So the affair doesn't matter, he sighed. It matters for dissipation. If she spent marital funds on the boyfriend, we can claw that back. And it can factor into custody if there's evidence of poor judgment or instability. But it's not going to be the slam dunk you might be hoping for. I signed the papers. Karen would receive them via certified mail, like a bomb wrapped in bureaucracy. Her reaction came 3 days later, in the form of a phone call at 2 a.m. "You filed?" Her voice was somewhere between disbelief and fury. "You actually filed? What did you expect me to do, Karen? Shake Ross's hand and thank him for keeping you company?" "We could have worked this out. Marriage counseling, trial separation. There are options, Mike. The option was for you to tell me the truth 6 months ago. That option is gone now." Silence on the line. Then, quieter. "You're going to destroy me in court. I'm going to protect my son, whatever that takes." I hung up before she could respond. The mandatory mediation session started in week 3. Pennsylvania wouldn't let you get divorced without at least trying to play nice first. Some bureaucrat's idea of saving marriages, I guess. Karen and I sat across from each other in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and broken promises, while a woman named Dr. Patel tried to help us communicate effectively. The first session was a disaster. Karen came in swinging, all wounded innocence and tearful accusations. "You've been stalking me," she said before Dr. Patel could even finish her introductions. "Following me around, taking pictures. Do you have any idea how violated that makes me feel?" "I have a pretty good idea how 6 months of lies made me feel," I shot back. "You want to compare notes?" "Please." Dr. Patel raised her hands. "This process only works if both parties engage respectfully." "Respectfully?" Karen laughed, sharp and bitter. "My husband turned our divorce into some kind of spy operation. Investigators, photographs, financial audits. Evidence," I said. "I've got evidence. Of what you did. There's a difference." That first session ended early. Dr. Patel suggested we take time to process before the next meeting. The second session went slightly better, meaning we managed to sit through the full hour without storming out. Dr. Patel introduced ground rules. No interrupting, no attacks. Focus on the future instead of relitigating the past. Karen actually seemed to be trying, which made it worse somehow. She talked about her mistakes and her desire to heal the family. Each word felt like a slap. "Mrs. Harlan," Dr. Patel said during our second session, "can you explain your concerns about the proposed custody arrangement?" Karen straightened in her chair, putting on her lawyer face. "I've been Jake's primary caregiver for 15 years. Mike works nights. He's not even home most evenings. The idea that he should suddenly have primary custody is absurd." "Mr. Harlan?" I pulled out a folder, the same folder I'd been building for weeks now. "These are my shift schedules for the past year. I've already requested a transfer to days, which should be approved by next month. These are attendance records for Jake's school events. I've been to 23 of them. And these are photos documenting where my wife was on nights she claimed to be working late." Karen's face went white. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been documenting, from public property. Perfectly legal." Dr. Patel held up her hand. "Let's try to keep this productive. Mr. Harlan, what is your primary concern regarding custody?" "My primary concern is that my wife involved our 15-year-old son in her affair. She gave him notes and stickers, told him to keep secrets from me. She used him as part of her cover story." I turned to Karen. "Tell me I'm wrong." She didn't say anything. "I think we need to take a break," Dr. Patel said. "Mills called me that same afternoon with news that made my stomach drop." "I found the financial trail," she said. "It's not pretty." "How bad?" $1,900 over 6 months. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts, all from your joint credit card, all categorized as business expenses. I sat down heavily on the edge of my bed. She was using our money to fund the affair. Yes, I've documented everything. Your attorney can use this to establish dissipation. Basically, she wasted marital assets on something that had nothing to do with the marriage. What about the falsified timesheets Ross mentioned? That's where it gets interesting. I heard papers shuffling on her end. I pulled what I could from public records, parking lot attendant statements, that kind of thing. The firm's been having internal problems for a while. Word is Ross was underperforming and your wife was covering for him, routing his calls, cleaning up his paperwork. The audit that triggered all this? It was already in the works. HR had been getting complaints about irregularities for months. So she wasn't just sleeping with him. She was risking her career for him. People do stupid things for bad reasons. But here's the thing. If the firm finds evidence of document falsification, that's a separate issue. Civil, potentially criminal, depending on what she doctored. Your divorce doesn't really touch that. Unless you want to make sure the right people know where to look. She paused. I'm not suggesting anything illegal, but sometimes investigations need a nudge in the right direction. I thought about it. The temptation was there. Watch Karen's professional life crumble the same way she'd crumbled our marriage. But Eddie's voice echoed in my head. Don't do anything that could backfire. Not yet. Let's see how custody plays out first. Your call. I'll keep the documentation ready if you change your mind. The weeks that followed were a slow grind. Jake's behavior got worse before it got better. He started skipping basketball practice, letting his grades slip. His coach called me twice in 1 week, worried about the kid who'd always been first to arrive and last to leave. Something going on at home? Coach Williams asked. Jake's not himself lately. Family stuff, I said. We're working through it. I found Jake one night sitting on the back porch, staring at nothing. No phone, no headphones, just him in the darkness. Something in his posture made me sit down beside him without a word. We stayed like that for a while. Then he spoke. Are you and Mom getting divorced? I'd been dreading this question since that rainy night. Had rehearsed answers, tried to figure out the best way to say it. But when the moment came, all my prepared speeches vanished. Yeah, buddy, we are. He nodded slowly, like he'd already known. Because of Ross? My heart stopped. What do you know about Ross? Mom's not as sneaky as she thinks. He picked at a splinter on the railing. I heard her on the phone with him a few months back, laughing in that weird way she does when she's nervous, like she was trying too hard. Jake. Then I started noticing stuff. The late nights, the way she'd smile at her phone and hide it when she saw me looking. He finally met my eyes. I'm not stupid, Dad. I figured it out. When? Couple months ago. Didn't want to believe it at first. His voice cracked slightly. She gave me that sticker thing, you know. Said it was a surprise for you. Made me feel like we were in on something fun together. And the whole time? I put my hand on his shoulder. You weren't being stupid. You were being a kid who trusted his mother. Yeah, well, not making that mistake again. Your mom loves you. Whatever she did, that doesn't change. I know, but I don't have to like what she did. And I don't have to pretend everything's fine. We sat there until the stars came out. At some point, he leaned his head against my shoulder, just for a second, like he used to when he was little. Then he straightened up. I'm going to bed. Get some sleep. He paused at the door. Dad, thanks for being straight with me. Then he was gone, and I was alone with thoughts I couldn't outrun. The custody evaluation happened in month 4. A guardian ad litem, basically a court-appointed advocate for Jake, interviewed all 3 of us separately, reviewed all the evidence, and spent an hour watching Jake and me interact at our house. Her name was Dr. Reeves, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who looked like she'd seen every kind of family dysfunction and wasn't impressed by any of it. She sat in our living room while Jake and I made dinner, spaghetti, his favorite, and asked questions that seemed casual but probably weren't. Jake, tell me about a typical weeknight with your dad. Jake shrugged, stirring the pasta. We eat dinner together, watch a game sometimes, or play video games. He helps me with homework if I need it. which I usually don't, but he asks anyway. What about weekends? Saturdays he takes me to scouts now. Sundays we usually just hang out. Go to the movies sometimes, or he comes to my games. Dr. Reeves made a note. And with your mom? A pause. Too long. She's usually working. Or she was, I guess. Before everything? Before everything? Jake looked at me, and I gave him a small nod. Tell the truth. Before I found out about the affair, before Dad filed for divorce. He set down the spoon, turned to face Dr. Reeves directly. Look, I know why you're here. You're trying to figure out where I should live, and I'm telling you straight. I want to stay with my dad. Why is that? Because he's honest with me. He doesn't make me keep secrets or pretend things are okay when they're not. Jake's voice got harder. My mom used me. She gave me notes and stickers and told me they were surprises for Dad, but they were just lies. Ways to make herself look good while she was sneaking around. That must have been difficult to realize. It was. But at least Dad told me the truth when I asked. Mom still acts like everything that happened was some kind of misunderstanding. He shook his head. I'm 16. I'm not a little kid. I know what an affair is, and I know what she did. Dr. Reeves spent another 30 minutes with us, watching us interact, asking about school and friends and future plans. Jake showed her his room, his basketball trophies, the project car engine he'd been working on with his scout troop. You've built something good here, she said to me quietly as Jake walked her to the door. That matters. I hope so. After she left, Jake turned to me with a worried expression. Did I say the right things? You said the truth. That's all you can do. What if she gives Mom custody anyway? What if I have to go live with her? I pulled him into a hug. That's not going to happen. I promise. How can you promise that? Because I'm going to fight like hell to keep you. And because judges aren't stupid. They can see what's best for a kid, even when the parents can't. He hugged me back, tight enough to hurt. I believe you, he said into my shoulder. Karen filed for 50-50 custody 2 weeks later. Her attorney argued that she'd been Jake's primary caregiver for 15 years and deserved equal time. Hendricks called me into his office to discuss strategy. She's claiming you were an absent father because of your work schedule, he said, sliding a copy of her motion across the desk. Says Jake needs stability, and she's the one who can provide it. I laughed, a bitter sound that didn't have much humor in it. Stability? She was sneaking around with her coworker for 6 months and using our son as her cover story. That's her idea of stability? I know, but we need to counter her narrative with evidence. Concrete evidence that you've been an involved parent despite your work schedule. I've got attendance records for every school event, coaches' statements from Jake's basketball team, report cards signed by me because Karen was too busy. I pulled out another folder. My collection was getting impressive. Plus everything Mills dug up on the financial dissipation. Hendricks flipped through the papers, nodding. This is solid. Combined with the Guardian ad litem's report, which I'm expecting to be favorable, we've got a strong case. What about the thing with Jake? The stickers and notes? That's actually our strongest point. It shows poor judgment, a willingness to manipulate your son to cover up her affair. Courts don't like that. I left his office feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Week 10. Brought the confrontation I'd been dreading, and, if I'm being honest, looking forward to. Mills had arranged for me to bump into Ross at the firm's parking lot, under the pretense of returning some documents Karen had left at the house. It was thin, but legal. I got there early, parked where I could see the main entrance. Watched the steady stream of suits coming and going, checking their phones, climbing into their imports. The kind of people who'd never loaded a truck or worked a midnight shift in their lives. Ross emerged at 5:47 p.m., briefcase in hand, tie loosened. looking every inch the corporate climber who'd decided my wife was a rung worth stepping on. I intercepted him by his car, a silver BMW that probably cost more than I made in a year. "Ross." He froze, keys halfway to the door. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or calculation. Then the mask came down. "Mike, what are you doing here?" "Returning some of Karen's things." I held up a box I'd prepared. Old files, nothing important. "Thought I'd save her the trip." "You couldn't mail them?" "I could have, but then I wouldn't get to have this conversation." I set the box on the hood of his car, not gently. "You and me, Ross. Man to man. No lawyers, no investigators. Just two guys talking about how one of them decided to tear apart another man's family for sport." His jaw tightened. "It wasn't like that." "No? Then what was it like?" "Enlighten me. I'd love to understand how you went from team-building exercises to banging my wife in motel rooms while I was loading trucks and thinking about how to afford Jake's college." "Karen made her own choices." "Don't." I stepped closer, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead. "Don't you dare put this on her like you're some innocent bystander. You knew she was married. You knew she had a kid. You knew what you were doing every single time you met her at some restaurant or hotel or wherever else you were sneaking around." Ross's composure cracked, just a little. "Look, I'm not proud of what happened, but you can't blame me for your marriage falling apart. Karen was unhappy long before I came into the picture." "Was she?" "Funny, she never mentioned that to me. Must have slipped her mind between 'I love you' and 'I'm working late again.'" "Mike, I don't want trouble. Too late for that." I picked up the box. "This is me, warning you. Stay away from my son. Stay away from my house. And if I find out you're still seeing Karen, still sneaking around behind whatever passes for your life, you'll what? Beat me up in a parking lot?" I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "No. I'll make sure every document, every receipt, every piece of evidence I've collected ends up in front of the right people. HR, the bar association, maybe the local news. Your career, your reputation, everything you've built, gone." That sounds like a threat. That's because it is a threat. I turned and walked away, calling over my shoulder. "Have a nice evening, Ross. Drive safe." Behind me, I heard him fumbling with his keys, hands shaking. Small victory, maybe. But it felt good. Mills was waiting in her car across the lot. "How'd it go?" "He's scared." "Good. You know confronting him like that could backfire in court." "I know, but some things need to be said out loud." She nodded slowly. "I get that. Just be careful. We're in the home stretch. Don't give them anything to use against you." Month 5 brought the firm's internal investigation to a head. Someone had tipped off HR about the falsified timesheets. I never found out who. And suddenly Karen was drowning in meetings and depositions in panic. She called me late one night, voice shaking. "Did you do this?" "Do what?" "The investigation. Someone complained to HR. They're looking at everything. The timesheets, the expense reports, all of it. They're going to fire me, Mike." I could have lied. Could have played innocent and let her twist in the wind. But something in her voice stopped me. The same desperation I'd heard that night in the rain, when everything started falling apart. "I didn't make any complaints," I said. Technically true. Mills had handled that part. "But you should have thought about consequences before you started falsifying documents." I was covering for Ross. He was the one who, "I don't care who started it. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them." Silence on the line. Then, "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "No," I said, and I meant it. "I'm not enjoying any of this. But I'm also not going to pretend you didn't do what you did." I hung up before she could respond. The divorce trial lasted 3 days. Day 1 was opening statements. Karen's attorney, a sharp-tongued woman named Whitfield who charged $500 an hour, painted a picture of a devoted mother, blindsided by her husband's cruel pursuit of vengeance. Mrs. Harlan dedicated 15 years to raising her son and supporting her family, Whitfield said, pacing in front of the judge. While Mr. Harlan worked nights by choice, she was the one attending school events, helping with homework, nurturing her son through the challenges of adolescence. And now, when her marriage has hit a rough patch, her husband responds not with counseling or communication, but with surveillance, investigators, and a campaign designed to humiliate her. Hendricks didn't let that stand. Your Honor, the evidence will show that Mrs. Harlan conducted a 6-month affair with a coworker, using marital funds to finance hotel rooms and expensive gifts. More troubling, she involved her 15-year-old son in the deception, giving him notes and instructions designed to help conceal the affair from his father. This isn't about vengeance. This is about protecting a child from a parent whose judgment has proven catastrophically poor. Day 2 was evidence, and this was where things got ugly. Mills took the stand first. Hendricks walked her through everything: the photographs, the financial records, the timeline of deception. Ms. Mills, can you describe what you found in your investigation? Certainly. Mills adjusted her glasses and consulted her notes. Beginning approximately 6 months before the present proceedings, Mrs. Harlan established a pattern of meeting her coworker, Ross Davidson, at various hotels and restaurants in the area. These meetings occurred an average of twice weekly, typically during times she had reported to her husband as working late or attending professional development sessions. And the financial records? I found 19 documented instances where Mrs. Harlan charged hotel rooms, restaurant meals, and various gifts to the couple's joint credit card, categorizing them as business expenses. The total amount was approximately $1,900 over the 6-month period. Whitfield's cross-examination was aggressive, but ultimately ineffective. Ms. Mills, isn't it true that you were hired and paid by Mr. Harlan? That's correct. So you had a financial incentive to find evidence supporting his case? I had a financial incentive to find the truth. The evidence speaks for itself. My turn came after lunch. Hendricks led me through the discovery, the phone call, the planner, the photographs. I kept my voice steady, even when I wanted to scream. Mr. Harlan, can you tell the court about the incident with your son and the sticker? Yes. I took a breath. About 3 weeks after I learned about the affair, I found a motivational sticker in my son's backpack with a note from his mother. The note said to give it to me when the time is right, and not to tell me, that it was a special surprise related to her work bonus. And what did you make of this? I realized my wife had been using our son to maintain her cover story, making him complicit in her lies without his understanding what he was actually participating in. Whitfield went after me hard on cross. Mr. Harlan, isn't it true that you've been conducting surveillance on your wife for months? I've been documenting her behavior from public property. Everything I've done has been legal. Legal, perhaps, but healthy? Normal? She stepped closer. You followed her to her coworker's apartment. You sat outside for nearly an hour, watching. Does that sound like the behavior of a stable, trustworthy parent? It sounds like the behavior of a father trying to understand why his wife has been lying to him for 6 months. I needed to know the truth. For the court? Or for yourself? Both. Day 3 was closing arguments. Whitfield gave it everything she had: the devoted mother, the overreacting husband, the family that could still be saved with enough therapy and goodwill. But Hendricks had the facts on his side, and he used them like a surgeon. Your Honor, this case is not about punishing adultery. It's about determining what arrangement best serves the interests of a 15-year-old boy who has been manipulated by his mother, deceived about the state of his family, and used as an unwitting accomplice in an affair. The evidence shows that Mr. Harlan has been a consistent, present father despite his work schedule. Mrs. Harlan, by contrast, has demonstrated a pattern of deception and poor judgment that calls into question her fitness as a primary custodian. The judge retreated to her chambers. We waited for 2 hours. Karen sat on one side of the courtroom, I sat on the other. Neither of us looked at each other. When the judge returned, the room fell silent. After reviewing all evidence presented, she began, the court finds that primary custody should be awarded to the father, Mr. Michael Harlan, with supervised visitation for the mother on alternating weekends and 1 weeknight dinner per week. Karen made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. The judge continued. The evidence clearly demonstrates a pattern of deception and poor judgment on the part of Mrs. Harlan, including the troubling involvement of the minor child in concealing her extramarital affair. Additionally, the court finds dissipation of marital assets totaling approximately $1,900, which will be factored into the equitable distribution of property. She went on. Details about the house, the retirement accounts, the logistics of co-parenting. But I barely heard any of it. All I could think about was Jake, waiting at home with Eddie to hear how his future had been decided. As we filed out of the courtroom, Karen grabbed my arm. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I'll appeal. I'll prove you turned him against me." I looked at her. Really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman I'd married was still in there somewhere, buried under layers of desperation and resentment. But I couldn't find it in me to feel sorry for her. "You turned him against yourself," I said. "I just documented it." I walked out into the spring sunshine, pulled out my phone, and called my son. "Hey buddy, it's over. We won." The aftermath was messy, the way divorces always are. Karen didn't take the ruling well. She cornered me in the courthouse parking lot after the verdict, mascara running, hands shaking. "You did this," she hissed. "You turned him against me." "I didn't turn him against anyone. I just stopped covering for you." "He's my son, Mike. My son. I carried him for 9 months. I was there for every fever and nightmare and first day of school. And then you threw all that away for some guy in a fancy suit." I kept my voice level, conscious of the lawyers and clerks passing by. "That was your choice, Karen, not mine. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A mistake is bouncing a check. You spent 6 months lying to my face while sleeping with your coworker. That's not a mistake. That's a choice, made over and over again." She grabbed my arm, nails digging in. "I can change. I've been going to therapy. I've ended things with Ross completely. Good for you. But that doesn't undo what you did to Jake. He trusted you. He thought you were planning some nice surprise for me, and the whole time he was helping you lie." I pulled my arm free. "You want to fix things with your son? Start by being honest with him. Stop pretending you were some kind of victim." I walked away. Behind me, I heard her sob. One sharp, broken sound that almost made me turn around. Almost. Karen appealed the custody decision 3 months later, claiming she'd reformed and deserved more time with Jake. Her new attorney argued that the original ruling had been too harsh, that Mrs. Harlan had learned from her mistakes and was committed to rebuilding her relationship with her son. The judge, the same woman who'd handled our divorce, wasn't having it. "Mrs. Harlan," she said, reviewing the appeal documents, "I see nothing in this motion that addresses the fundamental concerns raised during the original proceedings. Your conduct, specifically your involvement of your minor son in concealing an extramarital affair, demonstrated poor judgment and a willingness to prioritize your own interests over your child's well-being. Your Honor, I've been in therapy. I'm glad to hear it. But therapy doesn't change the facts. The original custody arrangement was based on evidence, testimony, and the recommendation of the guardian ad litem. Unless you can present new evidence that substantially changes the picture." She couldn't. The appeal was dismissed in 40 minutes. The firm completed their investigation around the same time. Someone, I never found out who, had tipped off HR about the falsified timesheets, and suddenly Karen was drowning in meetings and depositions and the slow unraveling of everything she'd built professionally. Mills called with the update. She's been demoted to entry level. Not fired, technically, but reassigned to the worst position in the department. Filing, scheduling, basic clerical work. After 15 years. And Ross? Transferred to another office. Officially a lateral move, but everyone knows what it means. I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. The gossip mill's been brutal. Nobody wants to be associated with either of them. Is that it? No criminal charges? The firm decided to handle it internally. They don't want the publicity of a fraud investigation. But her career's done, at least at that company. Nobody's going to promote the woman who falsified documents to cover for her affair partner. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. Karen texted me a few days later. I know you did this. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond. Jake still saw his mother on the court-ordered schedule, alternating weekends, one weeknight dinner, but the visits got shorter and more strained as time went on. He'd come home quiet, withdrawn, and it would take a day or two before he was himself again. She keeps pushing, he told me one night after a particularly difficult dinner. Asking if you're seeing anyone, if I like staying here, if I've thought about spending more time with her. What do you say? I told her the truth, that I like it here, and I'm not ready to change the arrangement. He picked at his food. She didn't take it well. Started crying about how she's trying so hard and nobody gives her a chance. That sounds tough. It is. But it's also... He struggled for the word. Manipulative? Like she's trying to make me feel guilty for having feelings about what she did. You're not wrong to feel how you feel. I know. That's what my therapist says too. He managed a small smile. She's actually pretty helpful, the therapist. Makes me talk about stuff I don't want to talk about, but afterward I feel... lighter. Good. That's what therapy's supposed to do. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then, Dad, do you think Mom will ever actually change? I thought about it carefully before answering. I think she's capable of changing. Whether she will or not, that's up to her. But whatever she decides, it doesn't change what you need. You get to protect yourself, even from your own mother. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. The day shift transfer came through in month 7, which meant I was actually home for dinner most nights. The foreman had been surprisingly understanding about the whole thing. You've been carrying a heavy load, Harlan, he said when he told me the news. Time to put some of it down. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you making this happen. Don't thank me. You've been one of my best guys for 12 years. About time the schedule worked in your favor. He paused at the door. How's the boy doing? Better. Some days are harder than others, but he's tough. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He nodded and left. Jake threw himself into scouts with an intensity I hadn't seen since he was a little kid. His troop was working on restoring an old car engine, teaching the boys mechanics, teamwork, responsibility. He came home covered in grease most Saturdays, grinning like he'd won the lottery. You should come watch sometime, he said one evening, excitedly describing some complicated thing they'd done with a carburetor. We're almost done. Going to fire it up next week. I'd like that. Dad? He was quiet for a moment. Thanks for being there. I know things have been crazy, but it means a lot. That you show up. That's my job, buddy, showing up. He smiled. A real smile, the first one I'd seen in weeks. Yeah, you're pretty good at it. Mia Reyes entered my life in month 8, and she did it the same way she did everything else. Direct, unexpected, and impossible to ignore. She was a nurse at Gazinger, the hospital where I'd taken Jake for his broken arm 2 years back. We met again at a warehouse first aid training session. She was the instructor. I was the guy who couldn't remember which side of the bandage went where. "You're that dad," she said afterward, recognition dawning in her eyes. "The one with the kid who tried to convince me his arm wasn't broken so he could play in his basketball game. That's us. Stubbornness runs in the family." She laughed. A real laugh, not the polite kind. "How's he doing?" "Better, growing up too fast." "They all do." She tilted her head, studying me. "Can I buy you a coffee, as an apology for making you look incompetent in front of your coworkers?" "I do that fine on my own. But sure, coffee sounds good." The coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into more dinners. I told her about the divorce early. Didn't see the point in pretending to be something I wasn't. "That's rough," she said when I finished, stirring her drink. "My ex cheated too. Found out when his girlfriend showed up at the hospital, pregnant, asking to see him." "What did you do?" "Changed the locks and donated his golf clubs to Goodwill." She smiled, but there was steel behind it. "Best decision I ever made." "No regrets?" "About the golf clubs?" "Sometimes. They were nice clubs." She reached across the table and touched my hand. "About leaving him?" "Not for 1 second." Jake approved of her, which mattered more than I wanted to admit. She came to his scout meetings, helped him with his science projects, didn't try too hard to be his friend. Just showed up consistently, which was more than his mother was doing. "She's pretty cool," Jake admitted one night, after Mia had helped him debug some problem with his engine project. "Not like some of my friends' stepmoms, always trying to be their best friend or whatever." "She's not your stepmom." "I know, but she could be, right? Eventually?" I didn't have an answer for that. Not yet. The anonymous envelope arrived in month 11. No return address, just my name and handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single receipt, one of the fake expense reports Karen had filed, with her signature at the bottom. Attached was a post-it note. "Thanks for standing up. The mill's cleaner now." I never found out who sent it. Part of me didn't want to know. Christmas that year was the first one in the new normal. Jake, Mia, her mother, and a few guys from the warehouse who didn't have anywhere else to go. The house was loud and warm and chaotic in all the best ways. We cleaned up afterward, Mia and me, shoulders bumping as we loaded the dishwasher. "I've been thinking," I said. "Dangerous habit." I laughed. "About us, about where this is going." She stopped what she was doing and looked at me. Really looked at me, the way she did when she was assessing whether someone was telling her the full story. "Where do you want it to go?" The ring was in my pocket. Had been for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Turned out the right moment was standing in my kitchen with dish soap on my hands, and the woman I loved giving me that look. I pulled it out. Nothing fancy, a simple band with a small diamond. "Mia, I'm not good at speeches, never was, but I'm good at showing up. I'm good at being there when it counts." I held out the ring. "And I want to be there for you." Her eyes went bright. "Mike Harlan, that's terrible." "Is that a no?" She grabbed my collar and kissed me hard enough to knock the sponge out of my hand. "That's a yes, you idiot." Jake's whoop from the doorway, he'd been watching, the sneak, was the last thing I heard before she pulled me close. New Year's Eve, I took Jake to the old mill lot. The place was being torn down now, making way for some shopping center nobody needed. We stood in the gravel where it all started. The phone call, the rain, the stranger in the suit. "This is where it happened?" Jake asked. "This is where I found out. Right here." He looked at the construction equipment, the half-demolished buildings, the chain-link fence covered in development permits. "Doesn't look like much." "It isn't. That's the point." I turned to face him. "Places don't have power. Things happen to us, good and bad, but they don't define us. What matters is what we do after." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's pretty deep, Dad. Don't tell anyone. I've got a reputation." He laughed, and we walked back to the truck together. Mia was waiting at home with champagne and the terrible dance moves I'd somehow fallen in love with. Jake disappeared to his room to text his girlfriend, a nice kid named Sophie who he thought I didn't know about. At midnight, I kissed my fiancé and thought about how different this year had been from the last one. 12 months ago, I was a man whose world had just been shattered. Tonight, I was a man who'd put it back together. Different pieces, better configuration. Karen texted at 12:03 a.m. "Happy New Year. Hope Jake's well." I showed it to Mia. "Think I should respond? What do you want to say?" I thought about it. Then I put the phone in my pocket. "Nothing," I said. "Some cargo's not worth carrying." We danced badly in the living room until our feet hurt, and then we went to bed, and I slept better than I had in months. The mill's gone now, completely demolished. Nothing but foundation and memory. I drive past sometimes on my way to work, day shift finally, after all those years. And I think about that night. The rain, the phone call, the stranger waiting in the dark. Then I go home to my family and I don't think about it anymore.